Spreadsheet applications, Module 5, macros and automation. Introduction to macros. Basics of macro and VBA for automating repetitive tasks. In Microsoft Excel, where spreadsheets are the playground, we often encounter the repetitious demands of certain tasks. These are the tasks that seem to crop up again and again, capturing our attention with relentless persistence. And there are certain tasks that may be required of you in the office, maybe to format a sheet to meet up certain criteria or certain formatting standard. And you have to do it perhaps weekly or daily or monthly. But as far as repetition is concerned, you are stuck to that. Now, how do you avoid repeating the same task over and over? That is where macros come to play. So what is macro in Excel? Macros can be considered as a set of programming instructions that can be recorded, named, saved, and executed in Visual Basic for applications, that's VBA, as and when required. So macros can help us to automate repetitive tasks associated with data manipulation that must be accomplished repeatedly, just like we've said. And the beauty with macro is that as you are recording this task, as you're recording a macro and you are implementing the task, macro will record everything, every step you take, and convert them into Visual Basic for application code that will run once you click the automate button, or once you run the same macro by the next time you need to repeat the task. So how to turn on developers tab in Excel? There are other ways to access macro in Excel, like the view tab, but it's not as elaborate as when you use the developers tab. Now, usually, most Excel, once you launch Microsoft Excel, most Excel version do not have developers tool turned on by default. Like you can see on the ribbon, we don't have the developers tool in this point. But how do you achieve that? You achieve that by right-clicking on customize the ribbon. As you turn on the developers tool by doing that. Once you do that, it will come up with a dialog box where you click on the checkbox in front of the developer tool and click OK. Once that is done, you will see the developer tool. Now, if you can see where the mouse pointer is now, the developer tool is showing. Meanwhile, while initially it wasn't showing on the ribbon, but now it's showing because we have turned it on in the options dialog box. Now, how to record a macro in Excel? Click on the developer tool tab on the ribbon, which is this. Then you see record macro, which is where I'm pointing right now. So once you click on record macro, then it will ask you to come up with a dialog box. What name will you want to give that macro? For example, you are formatting a sheet or you are creating a chart. So you may say, okay, format underscore sheet or create underscore charts. Now, it doesn't allow space in between. You can either capitalize, use the initial case, maybe create chart one word, but the other, we have the initial cap or title case as it's called in Microsoft Office. Now, still on step 2, the name, like we said, after filling in the dialog box, click on OK. So after filling in the name, following the preset rule, the next thing to do is to click on OK. As soon as OK is clicked, Excel macros record the set of operation the user is practicing. So whatever you are implementing at that time, so it is at this point you start formatting the document or you start carrying out whatever tasks you need to carry on the documents that you are running the macro on. That task is what you will replicate later by running the macro. So once the work is done in the developer tab on the options, click on stop recording. By the time you click on start recording, the start recording button, the same button would change status to stop recording, just like we're seeing here. So once you click on stop recording, the macro you are done with the macro, it will record that macro. So what do you need to do next? Now, the next thing is, how do we run the macro in Excel? There are multiple ways to run the macro. Now, number 1 is by clicking on a shape. Now, what you do at this point is to insert a shape, then assign a macro to that shape. So at the end of the day, once you click on that shape, the shape will automatically run the macro. So choose any shape of choice, then add, in this case, we are selecting the oval shape. On step 3, say add and edit the shape, which is this. Then you can put the write-up you want to put. Then the next thing is to right-click on the shape and assign a macro to it. Assign a macro to it. Then once you do that, select the macro. Now, when you click assign macro, it will show you the list of macros, just like we're seeing. So you select the macro and click OK. So at that point, the macro is assigned. So you can simply run that task, or repeat that task, or run the macro the next time you click on the button. That's one way to run the macro. Now, how to run the macro? By clicking a button. The good thing is that the developer tool also come with buttons that can run macros. So you can assign, the macros are assigned to them as soon as you click on that button. So step 1, go to the developer tab on the ribbon. In the controls group, click on the button. Look at the button we're talking about. As soon as you click on the button, it comes up with a dialog box. What name will you want to give the button? Give the button the name, then click and assign a macro to it, just like you assign, we did the assignment with the shape, and click OK. Once that is done, the button is there, so you can give the button whatever name you want to give it, format the button however you want to format it. But the beauty is that this button also, this button being assigned to the macro, will allow you the next time to repeat those tasks by clicking on the button. So how to run a macro from Excel ribbon? Yet again, there is another way to run the macro. Go to the developer tab on the ribbon, then in the code group, click on macros. Look at it, and it's even enlarged here. You click on macros. When you click on macros, it will show you a list of macros, because like we said, it's not just one task. You can have multiple macros running in a single workbook. So, but in this case, we have a single macro called macro 4. So you select the macro and click on run. So meanwhile, you will have placed your cursor, your cell pointer on the sheet where you are to repeat the task. So once you do that and click and follow the steps and click on run macro, now the macro will run and implement the task. So how to run macro in VBA editor? That's the Visual Basic for Application Editor. You go to developer tool. Then once you click on the developer tool, you see the points, the Visual Basic icon. Click on it, it's enlarged here. So as soon as you click on it, it will take you to the Visual Basic for Application window. Now look at the interface. So click on the Visual Basic, it takes us to the interface. What do we see? Now you can click on run to run. Once you click on the run, that's the play, it looks like the play button here. Once you click on run, it will bring up a list of macro you want to run. So which of them do you want to run? And the beauty is that at that point, you can either run the macro here, or you edit the macro. By clicking on edit the macro, it will take you to the VBA editor. Remember, we said initially that once you record macros, the recorded macro is converted into Visual Basic code. So it is a code you edit later and tweak as you want. So anytime you say, okay, whatever task I'm doing, I want to just make some adjustment to those tasks, you do that in the Visual Basic for Application code. So how to view macro in Excel? Now, we saw initially that by the time you click on the developer tool and click on macros, it will show you a list of all the macros. Like previously we had one macro, but here you can see several macros. That means you have several automated tasks. One macro handles another task, another macro handles another task. You have several macros handling various tasks. So click on macros to see the list of available macros, which is step 3 in the active workbook. Then select a macro to view. So you select the macro you want, then you can run or edit the macro from here if needed. So close the macro dialog box when you are done, because we are looking at how to view the macros. So look at the macros to view whatever you want to do with them. Stated, you can either edit or run or even delete the macro. So how to save the recorded macro in Excel? Step 1, record your actions. Just like we said, that's click on stop recording. After that, save your workbook as xlsm. That's macro-enabled format. Your macro is now saved in the workbook. So don't forget this. This is a very important point for the test. the extension that is of the format in which you save the workbook that has the macro, because remember the macro is embedded in your workbook. So that workbook will not be saved as a normal Excel file, but will be saved as a macro-enabled file. So how to use the VBA editor in Excel. So remember I told us earlier on that the VBA is where you edit, the VBA platform or the application window is where you edit your macros. So unlock the full potential of Microsoft Excel by diving into the world of Visual Basic for application. Is a whole big word, but at least we are just mentioning it for the purpose of this test for us to know and follow up. Now, what is Visual Basic Editor in Excel? Visual Basic for application is a programming language that allows you to automate tasks, create custom functions, and build interactive applications within Excel. If you understand how to use even the application or the window, the programming language itself, you can even run this code without actually having to run the macro. You can write the code as much as you understand to accomplish any task. So it must not necessarily be done by running the macro, because remember the macro will eventually generate the code. So why not? You can generate the code straight. So toolbars and menu. We can see that it has toolbar, the menu bar, and then it has the toolbar. Then it has the project explorer where it shows all. It shows the current sheets, the sheets you have in the workbook. It shows the module you have, because each macro is represented by a module. So code window. So the code window is where you do the editing in Visual Basic for application. The code window is where you do the editing. Next, how to open Visual Basic Editor in Excel. This is also important for the purpose of the test. Now, select Developer tab in Excel and click on Visual Basic. That for application, which is this. Visual Basic, which is this, or press Alternate plus F11. Alternate and F11 together. That's Alternate plus F11. That is how to do that. Then, how do we now insert a module in the VBA? Remember, I told us that modules represent the macros because the codes are in the module. So click on the Insert tab and select module. Click the Insert tab and then by the time you select module, it will create a module. That's for those who are creating it from the scratch, because we're looking at an alternative way of generating this macro using code. So how to delete a module? Deleting a module is simple. All you need to do is to go to the Explorer. In this case, look at the module, right click on the module. It will tell you remove module. Click on remove module and the module is deleted. Before we go to the practical, I would like us to go through the questions so that on the practical we can round up. So the questions we are likely to see in the digital challenge. Question number 1. What is the primary function of a macro in Excel? A, to edit spreadsheet layout. B, to automate repetitive tasks. C, to change the color scheme of a spreadsheet. D, to manually enter data into cells. We have established that it is to automate repetitive tasks. We've said it time and again during this presentation. So number 2, which tab must be enabled in Excel to access macro functionality? A, Home. B, Insert. C, Developer. D, View. It is the Developers tab. We have to enable it. By default, it's turned off, so we have to turn it on. So number 3, I'll answer number 3, then I'll leave you to answer the rest on your own. So what is the default file format required to save a macro-enabled workbook in Excel? Remember, we said it has to be macro-enabled. So is it the .xlsx format or xlsm format or CSV or .txt? Of course, it is B, which is .xlsm format, which is the macro-enabled format. So without wasting time, we'll go straight to the practical. So I'll open Excel workbook. I'll create a sample data, then replicate it in sheet 2. So what I will do here, let's just create an allowance data maybe a record that keep staff allowance for a meeting. So meeting allowance. So I'll put first name. Would like to get the first name of the staff. First name. I won't format anything here. So I'll go surname. Just take it raw. Then allowance. Next, I will fill in some data. So here, let me say first name is Emmanuel. Then surname, Simon. The allowance, let's say 5,000. We'll format it later, but for now, that is it. This second, Kingsley. Ojuola, 5,500. Then we have Dick Jones, 4,000. So at this point, I'll just simply copy all of this to sheet 2. So we want to carry out the task in sheet 1 and then run, record the macro in sheet 1 and run the macro in sheet 2 to show how tasks can be automated. So what I want to do at this point is to start recording the macro and then formatting the sheets. Remember, we say the developer's tab must be turned on. So if you look at this, good enough, we've not turned on the developer's tab here. So how do we do that? We say we should right-click on the ribbon and click Customize this ribbon. So when you click on Customize this ribbon, you'll see it will take also the dialog box where we customize the ribbon. You click on Developer. So click on the checkbox in front of Developer and click OK. So we'll give it time. Here it is. The Developer tool is now showing. So it's time to run our macro. I'll come here and click on Run Macro. So what name do I want to give this macro? I will just say format underscore sheet. So I'm just formatting the sheet. You can assign keyboard shortcuts, but the thing is that macros have an overriding this in over the existing keyboard, the default keyboard shortcut. So you have to make sure you are not using a keyboard shortcut that conflicts with the ones that are known in Excel workbook. So I'll click, for now, I'll not use the keyboard shortcut. I'll just click on OK to start recording the macro. So as soon as I click on OK to start recording the macro, notice that this turned to stop recording. So, but I've not started, so I'll now start implementing my tasks while the macro is still running. So what I want to do is I'll come to this place and then increase the size. So I'll go back to the Home tab. Okay, let me bold. And then increase the size to 14. Okay, then let me just give the allowance. Okay, I want them to align properly. Now, having done this, I also want to format these values for currency. I want to apply currency format to that. So I click on currency. So it has applied the dollar to read. So I want to remove the decimal places. So no decimal place. So having done that, I've gotten it to this point. I also want to go further by creating a chart that represents this allowance. So I'll select just the first name and click on my control key and select also the range for allowances. So what I will do at this point is to click on Insert. And then when I click on Insert, I'll select a chart of my choice. I think I'm okay with this. So in this task, I have succeeded in formatting the raw file. Then I've also added a chart. So I would like to stop here. Then you remember to go back to your developers tool and click on stop recording. So at this point, it is fully recorded. So how do we run this? Because we have several ways, but because of our time, we'll use one way, using the developer tool to run it. So I'll go to sheet 2. See, sheet 2 is raw. There's nothing done on this. So whatever I have done before, I don't have to repeat on sheet 2. So all I need to do is to go to Developers tab, click on Macros to see the list of macro. Now, if you look at the list of macro, we have the format underscore sheets. Then I'll simply click on Run. I selected it immediately. It's implemented that. You can see that I don't have to do everything I have done initially. It has repeated everything here and have given me to the point I stopped. So if you want your macro to be longer, why not? Macro does a whole lot of things here. Now, for the purpose of this test, I think we've covered the areas you need to concentrate. The practicals is to show you how these things actually work. Thank you very much. It's been a wonderful time.